what happened with me to get me thinking about this technique is I'm the training director in Kentucky, and the guy who was the training director before me was very into Myers-Briggs, which is based on Jung's stuff. And we used it with orientation for new employees, which is really common in the business world, to help people understand how they think and how they work. And I got certified in that, and then started seeing connections to that to try to how to fit up with what I really like to do, the trial work. And I'd also do a session of this for appellate lawyers. The main theory behind it, to me, is that not everybody thinks alike. At the very basic level of what Jung is saying, is that we think differently. And he talks about archetypes and some various things I'll talk about here. And that we have to understand that we're not arguing to ourselves. And that the perfect argument when we're in the shower is not going to be the perfect argument for everybody else in the world. And what this is something, is a work in progress, so feel free to disagree with stuff. But it's something I'm working on as a way when you've done your closing, you're ready for trial, and you want to make sure that you're going to reach everybody who's on the jury. You're not just arguing to yourself or to your law partner or whoever you're working with. And this will start to make sense as I go through things. That's the overview. I'll explain more. If you get tired of me yelling across the room, you come over here because I'm stuck with this laptop. Okay. So what this session is not about is we're not going to determine your personality type.
I thought we were taking a test.
No, I need more than 2 hours, and I need the next day to put people back together again when they're confused. I do a 2-day thing where you actually do the Myers-Briggs test. Has anyone done the Myers-Briggs test and knows what your type is or what they think your type is? So you're sort of familiar with this. We're not doing that right now. I may ask you if something rings true to you or you feel like that makes sense to you and you want to share that, feel free, or lie. I'm just doing that to get some interaction between us. So we're not going to determine what your type is. And this is not about, I'm not going to teach you how to profile your judge or that jury. There are jury experts. The woman who was on TV all the time for the O.J. Simpson case does that's her best guess of a Myers-Briggs personality for each person in the jury pool, and she comes up with a theory of what's the best combination for this case. And way too complex and over my head to even know whether I buy it or not. We're not going there that far, but you'll get a little bit of this. You may be able to think of the one judge that you're in front of a whole lot and why you can't connect with them. This may give you some ideas there. We'll talk about that some, but that's not the big. You're not going to have that skill after an hour of this, and it's not touchy-feely kumbaya stuff. I'm trying to give you a checklist and something really concrete in how to use this squishy Jung philosophy or psychology stuff. Okay. Here's what I'm trying to give you. It's going to reinforce. There's going to be a lot of stuff you already know. You're already doing. You didn't know why you were doing it, or you didn't have a name for why you were doing it. Hopefully, it'll reinforce that, and you'll realize how it works. It gives us just common vocabulary when we do some brainstorming. If you're still with me at 10 o'clock, to be able to look at these techniques, it gives you a label to call something that you may already be doing. And then there's this checklist that I gave you. That's something you can take and use later to say, wait a minute. I'm not dealing with people who think this way. How can I tell this story that I address those people too, and they'll come along for the ride with me? That's the big difference. And I'm going to talk, there are 8 different mental functions in Jung's philosophy, which turns into 16 when you do the math, the Myers-Briggs sort of thing. We're going to talk about those 8 functions. I'm going to show you video clips from 12 Angry Men, where in that jury, all 8 functions are represented there. Part of my theory is that's what helps make it a complete story. And if you really get into this and start watching movies this way, movies that work on all 8 of these buttons. Kill a Mockingbird, 12 Angry Men, things that last for a long time and connect with a lot of people are working on all levels. So we're going to show you the 8 and how they play out in that jury selection, how that jury makes a decision being aware of all 8 of these functions to get there. So I'll show you little clips from that. And I have to turn the sound on and off or it will be the drive the script. Okay, so here's a cartoon I found on the web, kind of selects talk about what I'm saying. When I select a jury, I look out at the panel into that sea of faces, and I think, I've got a story to tell. Which ones are going to relate to me? This time I think I've hit the friggin' mother load. But that's not what we get to do. We're not talking to, we will never get 12 people on the jury who have the same Jung personality type as you do. So this is to help you get out of you and to be able to talk to the other folks. This was a quote I think Jeff put up on Tuesday that says the same thing to me by studying my parable. We don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. That's us as trying to craft the stories, the danger there, but that's what the jury is trying to do as well. And if we're not connecting with who they are, we have a big hurdle to get over. That's the slide, that's Jung, he's the guy who was doing all this stuff rather than trying to apply it in a weird way. Okay, so Myers-Briggs, for those of you not so familiar with that, Isabella Myers and somebody, two women came up, got really into Jung's stuff back World War II-ish time. And we're looking at that and trying to help women in the workplace and help broader than that. And came up with the Myers-Briggs type indicator as a way to help people understand more about themselves. As I study that more and more, and I study Jung separately, it's a quickie way to get to Jung stuff, and it's not quite all there. To me, there's some differences and things I disagree with Myers-Briggs. I don't think Jung would be happy with. So the way I think about it is, if we went by the life rule of a search warrant means it's always a valid search, and no search warrant means it's not admissible, we'd be right most of the time. And that's sort of how the Myers-Briggs is with Jung stuff. But there are exceptions out there that you got to deal with. Myers-Briggs isn't a complete fit, but it's the best that there is out there. So it's a nice tool to help people think about it. Okay, let's get into the meat of it. This gets broken down into 4 main areas. And then these each get broken down into 2 different areas. So we've got 8 things we're talking about. And Jung sees these 4 areas as going into any decision that somebody makes. How they process information and what they do with that information. And then we each have strengths and weaknesses, home base, that we're stronger. And under stress we may go there, or we may not go there at all, depending on how successful we are in adapting different things. So you need to understand these 4 concepts to get the rest of it. The idea of sensing is that first we take in information with our senses. We see things, we hear things, we taste things. Information comes into us right now, into our system. Intuiting is the ability to see the big picture of something, or to see a vision of what this could be. It's more of an abstract way of taking in information. You can see patterns that are coming in. It's not the little details. Where this may be seeing, going for a hike and seeing the flower on the ground and being very interested in that, or seeing the tree. This is seeing the whole forest. And people are stronger at one or the other. Doesn't mean you can't do both, but there's one thing that you feel better about doing than the other. I'm very much a big picture person. I will miss the little obvious details unless I really focus on that, because I see the forest there, and I'll step on that flower and see it. So the idea is these are 2 ways that information comes into you. Either the little bits come into you, you notice a piece of lint, and you take it off, or you notice that, oh, that's Lorinda. And that's the big picture, as opposed to noticing that's somebody with a piece of lint on. Okay, so you get that information into you, and then you process it to make a decision. And there are 2 parts of that. There's the thinking process that is based on logic. And I'm going to show you a slide that writes these out better, too, so you don't have to draw little pictures. That's the way you process things. Thinking is more logical, it's more linear approach to it. It's sort of trying to be objective, not make decisions based necessarily on personal values or emotions or what your gut response is to something. You're trying to line it up. Feeling is not the best word for it. It's not only emotions. It's more than that. Emotions are a part of it. But the feeling part of it is also based on relationships between people. You may make a decision based on how this will impact relationships, where you may not be as concerned about with the thinking area, and it's based on your personal value system. Does this fit into the way I see the world? Is this right or wrong? It becomes a stronger factor in your decision making, rather than then you can explain in a linear way why this decision is right to someone else. It's just, this is right. This is just the way the world should be. Tends to be more that feeling area. Again, we can do all of this stuff. We all have the skills to do this, but we have certain areas that we're more comfortable with. Okay, another way of looking at that. With words. So sensing is becoming aware of sensory information. Intuiting is becoming aware of abstract patterns. Bigger picture, things come in mass, and you see a relationship that is there, not the kind of relationship I'm talking about, the feeling. Abstract stuff. Thinking is objective criteria. Don't worry about emotions or somebody's values. It's just, can we break this down into steps that make sense and make a decision based on that. And feeling is based more on subjective things. We're aware of how people relate to each other, what's this going to do in a relationship. It's also a personal value system gets put into it with a feeling when we're looking at feeling, the feeling part of the decision. Okay, so that's a picture there that I don't know why I put that in there. So we'll go to the next one. Okay, so like I mentioned with the 12 Angry Men before, stories that work hit on a level where they're dealing with all of these different things that are there, and there are conflicts between them that come up in the story, and people in the audience can see that and relate to one person or not another person. So it's very common that you'll see these broken down into archetypes, and you'll see in a movie or a television show or a book, this person is really strong on this one, sort of over the top strong on something to represent that type of thinking, and then you put a story into motion where these things come into conflict. And then the author usually makes an argument that one way or the other way is the best way to solve the problem. Or in Star Trek, the argument was you got it, the diversity of it is how you solve the problem. Any one by themselves wouldn't work. And that's a common theme, and that was something that, one reason why Star Trek, I think, hit on so many levels is that you saw not only diverse colors and alien genders coming together, but the main idea is different ways of thinking coming together for the greater good. So, Star Trek, who would be the censor? Starts hard, it gets easier. Any idea? Scotty is the censor taking in information here and now. He represents that for it. The intuitor, big picture, he sees it all. He doesn't care if Scotty can't get that screw to fit in there. I need it to work. Kirk represents the big picture, the vision for it all, taking in the information, seeing connections between things that are there, while Scotty represents little detail. Got that? Huh? Spot. Represents thinking, that's the easiest one. And who's in conflict with Spock all the time is Bones. So for some people, that's another way to look at it. If you're not a Star Trek person, it's nothing to you at all. So go on to the next slide, quick. Okay. So this is the Jung and Myers-Briggs approach of things. So there are two steps in making a decision problem. See you, Colette. Feel free to leave if you want. If it's not working for you, I'm good.
It's not that, it's just that I'm going to
Go to Colette. So information comes into your system. That's the perceiving. That's the how you become aware of something, and then you do something with that information is what they call the judgment step. You make a decision based on thinking or feeling or some combination of those. It's your process of organizing, evaluating, and coming to a decision. Those two things break down that way. The other concept you need to be aware of, and how this suddenly 4 things breaks out into 8 things, is within those things they can go 2 different ways: sensing, intuiting, thinking, feeling. There's an extroverted version of it and an introverted version of it. In the Myers-Briggs world, they talk about this more like what you would just think of as an extroverted being, someone who loves parties and is more vocal, and an introverted being someone who would like to read books. They go a little further than that in a way that makes more sense. Is if you're tired at the end of the day, what do you do to re-energize yourself? And people who are extroverted tend to get energy by going to the cave, where people who are introverted, that would tire them out, and they would get energy by going and reading a book or being by themselves. Sort of relates to what we're talking about here, but let me explain it in a different way that's going to work with what we're doing. Extroverted, in terms of these processes, outer world focused. This is the most important part. It's focused on the here and now. when you extrovert one of those four functions. Introverted, inner world, that makes sense. But it's focused on past, future, or sort of this universal what's out there. So the big picture way to look at it is something that's extroverted. Put these off to the side, because we're going to come back and talk to them. Is very here and now focused in the present. So if you're sensing in the present, you're an extroverted sensor, and that is different than the introverted sensor, which has a past or future orientation to it. It will make more sense in a minute, I hope, or you can get up to it. Okay, so these are the codes that we're going to use. This is not mine, this is theirs. So this SES means sensing function, and the little E it means it's an extroverted sensing. If there were a little I there, it'd be an introverted sensing. That's just the code. I'm going to go through and explain the 8 and give you some examples. And if it doesn't make sense, get up to it. Okay, so we got these 8 things that we're going to talk about. And my argument to you guys is that you need to be aware of all 8. If you can hit all 8 of those, then you're going to cover everybody's strength and home base on the jury. That way. Okay. So we'll get into it. I'm going to turn on that weird beeping sound so we can hear the video. That's going to come in a second. Okay, so this is stuff in here, so you don't need to write it down. The extroverted sensing. Remember, sensing is how you're taking in information based on senses, what you see, feel, hear. If you're extroverted sensing, it's here and now, outer world focused. You're in the moment, you're observing what's going on, responding to it, you're seeing the details immediately. If you're very good at this, you take quick action on those details, more comfortable with facts and numbers, acting on impulse. So an example of somebody who would be really strong in this area are a lot of athletes. Michael Jordan is the example they usually give of somebody, when you're in the zone and you're responding to things and you're right there in the present, you're not thinking about the past. You take a free throw and you miss it, and that's gone, and you're into the next free throw and you're not beating yourself up for missing that previous free throw. People who are really strong with this are able to do that. A field goal kicker who is beating himself up because the last game he lost wouldn't be focused in this area. The one who can go out there, focus, put it through, is strong in that area. So, 12 Angry Men example. This is the jury deliberation of that. Everyone knows what I'm talking about here, so I don't explain. Oh, here's the short way of what's happening now. Each one of these, I've got a little motto for.
Might lie. That was just that I looked at him for a very long time. Seemed the jack was split under the shoulder. Or did you notice that? Hadn't to come to court like that. He was a very old man in a torn jacket. He walked very slowly to the stand. He was dragging his left leg and trying to hide it because he was ashamed.
Okay, tell me how that relates to what I was trying to explain. Saw all the details? That's it. The second, this one is perceiving information. The making a judgment is what you do with that information. We're going to see some of that bleeding over, and we'll talk more about it. What else did you see?
When the guy coughed, he stopped and then went right back to it.
Did you notice that one? Somebody like me would miss the call unless I was really trying to focus on that, because I was making a point. The big picture is I'm trying to make a point here. Okay. But he's in the here and now, and he's taking advantage of it. So knowing you're going to have at least one of those on your jury, what things are you trying to be aware of? Distractions? You mean in the here and now in the courtroom?
Keep my focus on that one, because they may pay attention to other things they hear that is not relevant to your case.
What might you tell your client because you're concerned about people who are noticing details?
How to dress, not to fidget.
Like his facial expressions when he's watching witnesses testify. Sweaty armpits, apparently. I like the way they say under the shoulder.
So what about in the story, that's sort of in the story of the trial, things you would be aware about. What about when you're constructing, how you're going to do your opening, or how you're going to do a cross or direct? What would you want to do for those people?
I'm thinking maybe look for details that would make the witness that I want to be, to seem more credible. I mean, for some reason, details seem to be very important to me.
A lot of the groups they've had you do, describe what you smell, describe what you hear, describe what you see, that sort of work. And that's to appeal to this aspect of how people take in information. Let's see what else we have next. Okay. So then, sensing the introverted version of that, well, that one was very here and now and outer world focused. Introverted, the key is it's focused on the past, future, or universal. So there's a comparison going on between information that's coming in now and a kind of a detail-based information somewhere else. It's not in the here and now. It notices the differences between this and that. And it's looking for lessons from things that you've experienced in the past. Visualizing chronologically is a part of that. Focusing on past mistakes. That would be the person who is taking the free throw and misses, and it gets chokes on the next free throw because they're still thinking about missing that one. That element of it. Filtering the unknown through known things. So there's a lot of comparing that's going on as the information comes in. So here's Jack Klugman doing something similar but very different from what we just saw the other guy do. Okay, and this, the motto for it is this is different than my experience. There's a comparison of details that's going on.
I hate these things. You ever see a knife fight? You? No. Anybody here ever seen a knife fight? Oh, I have. My back stoop, a lot across the street, backyard. Switchblades came with the neighborhood where I lived. Funny, I never thought of it before. I guess you try to forget those things. How do you use a switchblade? Well, you never use it like this. See, you lose too much time switching hands. Here's how. Underhand. Anyone who's ever used the switch knife wouldn't handle it any other way. Are you sure? I'm sure. That's why they made it open like that.
You'd say the boy was pretty handy with a knife.
Mm-hmm.
You think he could have made the kind of wound that killed his father?
No. Knowing the experience, I don't look like handling these things. I feel he'd have gone for underhanded. How do you know?
Okay, so talk to me about how that may or may not make sense to you, why that's introverted sense. What was he doing?
Maybe to his own language, learn all the facts that he's noticed through what he's experienced, what he feels like he knows.
So to make a decision on how it fits to him
In his reality.
in his reality. So he's going to try to, but it looks like he's fitting into his world, and that's how he's going to make a decision.
Yeah, it's getting a little bit into the judgment part, but it's his focus on how he gets information coming in is this instant comparison. He sees a switchblade, he goes to his reality with the switchblade. But you see it's also very detail focused in the sensory rather than the intuitive stuff, the big picture stuff. He noted that this is going to make a difference in that.
And it was even chronological.
Yeah, it was very,
Which one you do
this,
first.
this. Where someone like me who's more big picture focused, I may know, I may make an argument that you would have held it this way, but that way, but I'd describe it in a different way. Because the main point is, you couldn't have held it that way, rather than going through the little steps to get there. So what we're thinking about is how to make sure that Jack Klugman person on the jury's got something to latch on to argue for us, as well as me who think about it that way. Here's an example. This is the Kentucky Supreme Court. Here's somebody who's introverted sensing with volume. Let me start with it. No guy. It's Justice Will Scott. This is from an argument in Kentucky about a year ago. I'm going to switch through.
The one one thing I'm concerned about with respect to the focus that I see on this statute is innocent family activity. I had a wonderful father and a wonderful mother, yet their most famous photograph in our family album was a picture of me in cowboy boots and a cowboy hat and a pair of six-shooters on my side when I was 6 years old and nothing else.
Mr. Sherr,
That was embarrassing. That was very embarrassing. That was very embarrassing in later years, but they were wonderful people. Now, my question is this, what objective standard is here for a later court to protect the family with a photograph like my famous cowboy picture?
So you see how he's processing the child porn case.
So the
This is,
picture was butt naked just with the boots?
The
He
boots
was.
and the six-shooters.
yeah. Most conservative judge on the court.
Really?
Because he could make that connection, he wrote the opinion reversing on the child porn case. Okay, now we're switching to big picture, how we take in information. And the extrovert. This is where I'm strongest. So, just me as an example. Any of you, before we get there, any of you feel like you're strongest in one of those sensing introvert or sensing extrovert? Do we want to say that in public?
Right now, I think I'm sensing, which I know because I talk to most people. I'm so.
Yeah, don't worry about the
But-
extrovert or
But,
that's a little different.
the sensing. I can always compare everything to either something I've done before, some life experience, some,
It ties into why you would do the next lecture, as opposed to me doing something. that's big
oh, very
picture, trying to
detailed.
connect things
Detailed,
together.
detailed.
Any of you feel like you were a sensor, or more of a big picture person?
Probably more of a sensor.
Is there one or the other that you're more comfortable with?
I think the introverted sensor is probably the most.
So now we're talking about, cutting it off, just let people off the hook. So feel free to share if you want to share. Extroverted intuition. This is big picture, in the here and now, outer world focused, as opposed to inner world focused. This is seeing the forest for the trees. We see big picture things, love to brainstorm, seeing connections between things that are different is what I'm doing right now. I took a class on Myers-Briggs. I see how that connects to telling stories and how storytelling connects to trial advocacy. So I do this thing to pull them all together and try to explain to other people. It's about interpreting experience and seeing what might be. Seeing the big picture and where you go with it. So, example from the motto for that would be, look at all the ways this could happen. I get excited when I see connections. Lots of possibilities. I'm very comfortable in that realm.
Supposing that.
So is having confidence.
Supposing they're wrong.
What do you mean, supposing they're wrong? What's the point of having witnesses at all?
Could they be wrong?
What are you trying to say? Those people sat on the stand under oath.
They're only people. People make mistakes. Could they be wrong?
Well, no, I don't think so.
You know so.
Oh, come on, nobody can know a thing like that. This isn't an exact science.
That's right, it isn't.
Jim nodding, you see that? Any examples anybody saw?
Seeing what might be.
Then the introverted version of that is more inner world focus, past, future, universal type of focus. This is honing in quickly on what the central theme is on something. People who are good at this area are very good at picking up themes when we're talking about theory and themes. This case is about betrayal. So they can hone in on that. Where somebody like me may say, it could be this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. And these connect, these two go together. This one is very much more connected to a quick one. You can see a vision more clearly. Take in information with complex patterns or systems, and you can see the meaning behind something. My boss, Ernie, who's going to do something this afternoon, this is his strength. He became a public advocate in Kentucky, had a very clear vision of what the public defender system should look like in 10 years. Used his other things to get there. When someone presents him with a problem, in his mind, he sees a solution. Where in my mind, I see, oh, you can do all these different things and help me come up with a decision. So, this is the main thing, is when you're operating that.
What we need is a little yelling in here. These guys keep going off every which way. Didn't hear the scream, didn't hear the scream. What difference does it make? You people are talking only about the little details. You're forgetting the important stuff. I mean, all the
Now that, that shows an example of it, also shows the bias to the screenwriter. You'll see that the screenwriter's point of view is that the Henry Fonda approach is the right way to solve this, as opposed to someone who's just focused on one idea, that you take in all the examples and you put it together. And you'll see how, there's another Henry Fonda example of how he processes that. So every writer has a sort of bias that they need to be aware of. What I'm saying is, us as writers, is we need to be aware of our own bias. But we can use different biases, depending on the facts of our case, and which one's going to win for us. Some cases should be decided on universal values and relationships, that the facts kill us. Other cases, it may be this guy really did this awful thing, but we didn't meet all the elements of the crime, so we're focusing them more on a logic-based approach to it. But we have to be aware that there are people on the jury who want to go one way or the other, and we need to get them to whichever one we need to win our case. Some head nodding, some
That doesn't mean that for us, for people like you that are brainstormers and see 5 solutions to the problem, that they need to be presenting 5 alternative theories.
No, not
Still
at all.
one. There's still
this
one,
is-
you just got to make sure that you're feeding the brain power of the 8 different types of people.
Yeah. And these 4, there are 8 different things going on here. The front page of this is how you take in information. And one of these 4 is your home base. But what you do with that information to make a decision is none of these 4. It's the next page of how you take that information and relate to it. So you got 2 of these things, one on each page, that are going on.
Okay.
I take in information, I get excited about all the possibilities, but I can't make decisions. I did get dressed this morning. Then there's a process that goes on that something actually happens with that information. So that's what we're turning down, is how people have that information come in. What do they do with it to make a decision? So these, you see how they work together? You can't make a decision with no information at all. You got to get it some way, but then you do something with that information and just leave that all day. Okay, this is the slippery slope argument. Classic argument is another example of the introverted, seeing what could happen in the future approach, introversion, intuition. All right, so now we're shifting to making decisions. Extroverted thinking is organizing, sequencing, looking at the elements of the crime. They didn't prove intent, I win. It's the lawyer who just puts up the big poster of the instructions and says they can't meet that. And yes, there are some jurors that work that way, but you probably all know that that's probably not going to speak to everyone. So here's an example of a juror who is all over that. Let's look at all the evidence.
Now, suppose we take these facts one at a time. 1. The boy admitted going out of the house at 8 o'clock on the night of the murder after being slapped several times by his father.
No, he didn't say slapped, he said punched. There's a difference between a slap and a punch.
After being hit several times by his father. 2. He went directly to a neighborhood junk shop where he bought one of those
Switch knives.
switchblade knives. This wasn't what you'd call an ordinary knife. It had a very unusual carved handle and blade. The storekeeper who sold it to him said it was the only one of its kind he had ever had in stock. 3. He met some friends of his in front of a tavern about 8:45. Am I right so far?
Yes, you are. You're very ill.
He talked with his friends for about an hour, leaving them at 9:45. During this time, they saw the switch knife. 4. They identified the death weapon in court
as that very same night. 5. He arrived home at about 10 o'clock. Now, this is where the stories offered by the state and the boy begin to diverge slightly. He claims that he went to a movie at about 11:30, returning home at 3:10 to find his father dead and himself arrested.
He also claims that the two detectives arrested him and threw him down a half flight of stairs.
Now, what happened to the switch knife? He claims that it fell through a hole in his pocket on the way to the movie sometime between 11:30 and 3:10, and that he never saw it again. Now, there's the tale, gentlemen. I think it's quite clear that the boy never went to the movies that night. No one in the house saw him go out at 11:30. No one at the theater identified him. He couldn't even remember the names of the pictures he saw.
Cold, logical, organize things, put them together in order that they go in, come up with a solution, look what's missing there. Law schools and most law professors think that's how juries should make decisions if they or do or should make decisions. That's how the rule should work. It's what gets reinforced in most law schools. Socratic method technique. That sort of stuff. So what do I have next? Okay, so the introverted, anybody, that one is your home base? No? Sort of, no. You can see it, how you would, that gets reinforced in law school over and over. And there's a, I'll show you some statistics later about where lawyers fall out on this, but that's one that lawyers get trapped into, and that's part of why there are institutes like this, is to get people to move out of that one only, even the way they are. Okay, the introverted thinker, this is really my strongest thing. The extroverted intuition is the second. I'm a supporter of that. This is seeing the total process. Remember, it's this past, future, universal focus, not so much as here and now. Checking for deviations from the logic and why. Spotting underlying cause. There's cause and effect relationships that are there. Seeking solutions, looking for where the tipping point is. A couple of you were in a group I had the other day where I talked about the key moment. That's something that rings true for me. Persuading through logical linear definitions. Let me show you. It sounds similar to the other one. Let me show you how that works differently. And again, this is the bias of the screenwriter, so Henry Fonda gets to be this. Turn up the volume first. So this is what's really happening here, is when you're thinking introverted thinking.
Let's take 2 pieces of testimony and try to put them together.
You see how he closes his eyes because it's inner world?
The old man in the apartment downstairs. He said he heard the boy say, "I'm going to kill you," and a split second later heard a body hit the floor. 1 second later, right? That's right. Second. The woman across the street swore positively she looked out of the window and saw the killing through the last 2 cars of a passing elevated train, right? The last 2 cars.
Well, what are you giving us here?
Just a minute. We've agreed that it takes 10 seconds for a train to pass a given point. Since the woman saw the killing through the last 2 cars, we can assume that the body hit the floor just as the train went by. Therefore, the train had been roaring by the old man's window a full 10 seconds before the body hit the floor. The old man, according to his own testimony, "I'm going to kill you," body hitting the floor a split second later, would have had to hear the boy make this statement with the yell roaring past his nose. It's not possible.
You see the difference between those two? They're both kind of linear in their thinking, but one's really looking at cause and effect, and the other one is more organizing and analyzing. We're just doing another session. If you want to go and watch one, then you're fine.
Not unless you really want to go into all the details.
Yeah. Introverted
I'm going to go do my
senses.
introverted.
Thanks, Fred. Okay, so those are the 2 thinking functions. Then the 2 feeling functions, more value-based, relationship-based, what we'll talk about now. A couple more examples, and I'll do some big picture stuff, and then we'll start relating it to our cases if you want to hang around and do that. So extroverted feeling. How the world here and now approach to the feeling is valuing harmony in relationships. Decisions are made based on, that will really mess up our group dynamic at this meeting. So-and-so will respond this way. Looking for reward and seeking recognition, being aware that people need reinforcers, and factoring that into your decision making, focusing on others' needs, values, Also persuade through personal details and experience. It's kind of similar to that introverted sensing with that one, so I'm not sure if that's the best description. This is timed perfectly, so this turns off just when I'm ready to turn up the volume every time. Okay, so here's that guy. Congratulations, you must be so happy. Let's start again.
Was he ashamed? I think I know this man better than anyone here. This is a quiet, frightened, insignificant old man who has been nothing all his life, who has never had recognition for his name in the newspapers. Nobody knows him. Nobody quotes him. Nobody seeks his advice after 75 years. Gentlemen, that's a very sad thing to think nothing. A man like this needs to be quoted, to be listened to be quoted just once. Very important to him. It is so hard for him to recede into the background.
Now, wait, what are you trying to do? Tell us he lied just so he could be important once?
No, he wouldn't really lie, but perhaps he made himself believe he heard those words and recognized the boy's face.
See the empathy and understanding the emotions behind how somebody responds. Very different than the guy who organized and this element over there, so obviously this. Doesn't care what's behind there. And you can see how this is one that the bias of this institution and a lot of institutions is to push people to be better in this area. And I'll talk about why that bias is there in a minute. Okay, last one and then we'll do some other stuff. Any questions so far? Anybody awake? You're still nodding and making eye contact like that. You're just really quiet. Okay, introverted feeling. This is the inner world, past, future, universal approach to the feeling process. This is seeking consistencies between personal values and what is going on in the world. Checking against your internal value system all the time. Deciding what is important. Valuing loyalty and commitments. Persuading other people through this is just right or wrong. Things are black and white. This kind of decision making is the introvert feeling. So this is what is right. I can't explain to you why, but I just know the right way to resolve this is this way. Because I believe in this, and that, about how the world should work, whether it's a religious-based belief or some other based belief.
This fighting, that's not why we are here. To fight, we have a responsibility. This I have always thought is a remarkable thing about democracy, that we are, what is the word? Notified. That we are notified by mail to come down to this place to decide on the guilt or innocence of a man we have never heard of before. We have nothing to gain or lose by our verdict. This is one of the reasons why we are strong. We should not make it a personal thing.
Okay, talk to me about why that is introverted feeling. Or how you might be aware of that before.
Can you run that one more time?
Sure.
This fighting, that's not why we are here. To fight, we have a responsibility. This I have always thought is a remarkable thing about democracy, that we are we are notified by mail to come down to this place to decide on the guilt or innocence of a man we have never heard of before. We have nothing to gain or lose by our verdict. This is one of the reasons why we are strong. We should not make it a personal thing.
Really nothing fact-based there, it's all kind of a gut feeling about what's going on.
The concept that it's better for, one innocent man to go free or
We want him to be neutral, you know. That's why it says it's not about us, it's not personal. Just do the right thing, but what is the right thing in their decision making? So he's all over too. He's not connecting it to him.
He's connecting it to his values about democracy in America. It's, some people say this is the flag waving part of your argument. It would be their concept that it's better for 10 guilty people to go free than one innocent person to go to jail is a value-based decision-making. That argument would fit into here. I got some more headlines. Feel free to leave if you want to leave. Some people are exhibiting leaving behavior. Y'all leave, I'll just look through a little break.
Well, you guys have any good,
Oh, yeah. No, I'm not taking it personally at all.
I'd like to stay here, I don't know, something else to do.
And this is
Okay.
recorded, right? But if you're not here, you're not gonna.
I'm going to stop if there's no one in the room. But
Tell
that's
me,
okay.
tell me the second half what's gonna be, because I wanted to go to expert stuff, but
I'm going to talk about how this works in decision-making some more, and how to be aware of what your preferences are, use those in that area. And then if there was anyone here who's going to brainstorm using these 8 functions, whatever cases people want to talk about.
since this would be even more valuable one-on-one, I'm staying, so I get the best of you.
Okay, sure.
Because my problem is,
Why don't you come on down?
I would never be a good salesperson, I know that, because I tell the whole thing, but nobody buys it. So I need to find a way that, I'm gonna come over here for fun. I need to learn what would make me an effective attorney, that when I'm talking to the jury, that they actually buy it that way. And like you said earlier, I am selling it to myself all right, but that's not the right way to do it.
Okay. Yeah, why don't you come, I'll go ahead and flip through these other slides, see if they help you.
Then I
And we
can
can
tell
talk
you
about
all
your case.
my weaknesses,
Sure.
because I'm only practicing less than 2 years.
Your mission. You go get a lot of support from that system person.
No, I'm actually thinking about moving to Chicago soon. As soon as the house is sold. Yesterday, I talked to a real estate agent again. I said, real estate, I am an introvert. I keep things in writing, but in expressing, it doesn't come.
I'll keep, feel free to stop me or, if this is not, this was designed for more people. Let's make it work. So the way those 8 things work out in terms of how people solve problems, and the way Myers and Briggs would explain this, is you get information, comes into your system, compare that to a past experience, brainstorm lots of ideas, come up with a theory or thinking, you organize that, you analyze it. So, and you can see that's sort of the model of this institute. You get facts, you gather information, you follow the review, brainstorm, you identify the things that are there, organize, is what we were doing on the peer group yesterday. Or 2 days ago. Hi. Come on up front, and I'll try to catch you up since you're.
We know you're taping, so we're sorry. Easy.
Yeah, take one of these.
Yeah, I gotta give one.
I'm gonna go through the last 10 minutes again, and maybe that'll, and feel free to help us on there. Familiar with Myers-Briggs or Young? You run into the Myers-Briggs type indicator, or yes? Done that, didn't buy it, or I don't know what that was. I'm not a big fan of Myers-Briggs, because I think it waters down what Newton was doing, so I'll try to go back to what Newton was doing and figure it out that way. The main concept is that jurors think in different ways than we think necessarily. There might be somebody on the jury who's exactly the same as us, but we need to be aware of all the different ways. And there are 8 functions that go on in how people think. I'm going to jump that. I'm going to do about 20 minutes of what we just did, and we can talk more at lunch if we don't get to what you were looking at. Since 66% don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going to jump into that. So I'm going to go back. Okay. Jung's theory that there are 4 primary mental functions going on. And the more you nod your head, the more I'll assume you're following me really quickly. So let me know quickly. And if you already know this, just tell me, I'll skip ahead. But information comes into your system through sensing, which is very detail-oriented, how you use your senses, hear things, smell things, touch things. It also comes in an abstract, big picture way at the same time. The difference is seeing the forest for the trees versus seeing the tree and not the forest. And the theory is that you're better at one than the other. Doesn't mean you can't do both. I'm very much a big picture person. I'm very likely to miss the little detail that's right in front of my face because I'm seeing the big picture most of the time. So that information comes into your system. These are how you perceive things. And then this is how you make decisions. And like I said before, you need both, or you wouldn't ever get out of bed. You have to make a decision to get up or not, or to get dressed or not. So thinking is a logic-based approach. Yes, go into this.
Jeff,
I don't know what it is.
I don't see the expert anyways, but I know where to find you.
Okay, yeah. I'll be around.
And this is something that you're going to talk about.
Feel free to call me. You've got,
I will, that's why I said I know how to find you.
okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, I like helping out, so feel free to call me. So I'll put it back. To get what you guys. I see what's on it. This is what I'm talking about. The sensing, the big picture. Thinking is more based on logical approaches to things, not so much based on personal values or emotions that are there. Feeling sounds like it's only based on emotions, but it's based on looking at relationships between people and personal values. My decision, I may not be able to explain wholly and logically why I decided to do this, but I know in my heart it's right, or if I don't do it this way, it's going to mess up my relationship with my wife. You know, it's based, there are other factors to making decisions than just logical, what makes sense. So here's the word-based, the visual. Sensing is how we become aware of sensory information through our senses. Intuiting is taking things in bigger chunks, where they relate to each other and the way the information comes in. Thinking is objective criteria. And feeling is more subjective and based on personal or universal values. People who are deeply religious may be stronger in this area than someone who decides they're atheist because you can't prove them God. So that's usually stay away from religions. So those there. So Star Trek analogy ring for anybody? Star Trek. No, the idea, what you can get from that though, is that storytellers put these things in motion and in stories represent them all and bring them into conflict. And then the bias of the storyteller usually comes through over which approach they are arguing is best, which is what we're doing in cases. There are some cases where we win with they didn't meet all the elements of the crime, corrected verdict, kind of sufficiency of the evidence situation. And we're going to use all of these things to get there so that we can reach the people who don't think that way. But we're going to show them how, that in this case, they need to apply that sort of approach. There are some cases, most of our cases, where we lose with that. But we might win with that this is a person who needs another case. We believe them in our system. And that gets more into how opponents come up with a solution and how Spock would come up with a solution. So the first two are how information comes into our system, receiving, and the second two are what we do with that. And the information comes in, we make a decision in our process to use. So everybody has a strength on each side of the distributed function. And there are people that function that have those. So as you look at that, you feel like you have to see one or the other that you're stronger in, or feel more comfortable in.
One from each.
If you're a detail person versus kind of a big picture person,
Big picture thinking.
big picture thinking. I'm sorry,
I would, Natasha,
Natasha.
I would be a detailed feeling person.
Good. Okay. So the other aspect of that, how that 4 thing turns into an 8 thing that I talked about earlier, shows up on your stuff, is each one of those has an extroverted and introverted point. The extroverted version of a sensor or any of these, extroverted is outer world focused, and it's in the here and now. Introverted is inner world focused, and it's past or future or universal, as opposed to right now in the moment. There's a relating to what could happen in the future, what happened in the past, or some universal knowledge that you need. And everybody can do both. The talkative, lively person at the party still has an introverted part to it. And the who's very introverted has to still get up in front of people and talk. But don't worry about that kind of extroverted introvert. It's different. Introvert. Okay, so these are the codes that they use. That's how I said this. This little messy thing in the corner means extroverted sensing. So the 4 main things each have an introvert and extrovert way that we get used. So that's all of it. I'm forgetting why I have this slide here. That's just what they all look like. So what I'll do now is go through the 8 of them and show you an example from 12 Angry Men. And like I was saying about the Star Trek thing, 12 Angry Men, one of the reasons why that's a great thing that survives and gets done on Broadway every 2 years is because it does a really nice job of putting all these 8 into conflict with each other. And then the bias of the storyteller kind of emerges into which one is the best to solve the story. And that's what Henry Fonda argues. But they all come into conflict, so we can all follow Henry Fonda there because it deals with our different ways of getting there. So the sound system's doing a weird thing, so every time I have to turn it on and off, I'll do what I'm doing over here. Otherwise it beeps and I don't know, it's crazy. So here's the jury in deliberation. Okay, yeah, each one of these I have a lot of for, so extroverted sensors see what's happening in the here and now. This tends, successful athletes are usually strong in this area. Michael Jordan is the example. They're in the zone. They're just seeing and responding. There's no worry about the future, no worry about the past. You're right there. And you're operating really well in that area.
Why do you think the old man might lie? That was just that I looked at him for a very long time. Seemed the jacket was split under the shoulder. Or did you notice that? I mean, to come to court like that. He was a very old man in a torn jacket. He walked very slowly with his stand. He was dragging his left leg and trying to hide it because he was ashamed.
And you see, he notices details in the here and now. When somebody coughed, he didn't gloss over the big picture. So I'm trying to tell you something. He had to stop and look at it. You know, he's the guy that you're worried about noticing that your client is doing something weird over a council table, or goes back and says, "Did you notice she never touched him? She always walked around with mine when she was lying." You know, those of that stature. Also, you know, this institute they emphasize a lot that what did you're getting the sense memory stuff when you're telling stories. What did they see? What did they hear? You're reaching out to people who process information that way. Introverted sensing is still detail-oriented, but it's focused on the past, future, or universal. So there's a lot of comparing what happened now, what the details are now, to some details you know in the past, based on what your experience is. So there's a filtering, there's more noticing discrepancies between things. The first guy wasn't noticing something different from something else. He noticed all the details in the presence. Watch Jack Lugman. This is different than my experience.
Give me that. Boy, I hate these things. Did you ever see a knife fight? You? No. Anybody here ever see a knife fight? Well, I had. You know, my back stoop, a lot across the street, backyard. Switchblades came with the neighborhood where I lived. Funny, I never thought of it before. I guess you'd try to forget those things. How do you use a switchblade? Well, he never used it like this. See, you lose too much time switching hands. Here's how. Underhand. Anyone who's ever used the switch knife wouldn't have handled it any other way. Are you sure? I'm sure. That's why they made it open like that.
You'd say the boy was pretty handy with the knife.
Mm-hmm.
You think he could have made the kind of wound that killed his father?
No. Nobody experienced you don't look like handling these things. I feel he'd have gone for him underhanded. How do you know?
See the difference between those two? Here's what gets passed. That's why voir dire is so important. You know, that guy you can rely on the jury in some cases and not on the jury in other cases, because he's going to really be processing through his reality. And you need to be aware the jurors are doing that. They're basing their decision based on things that don't happen or will happen. You need to find out.
How old is he?
Let me ask you a question, Sherr.
He's a Supreme Court
One
judge.
thing I'm concerned about with respect to the focus that I see on this statute is innocent family activity. I had a wonderful father and a wonderful mother. Yet their most famous photograph in our family album was a picture of me in cowboy boots and a cowboy hat and a pair of 6-shooters on my side when I was 6 years old and nothing else. That was embarrassing. That was very embarrassing. That was very embarrassing in later years, but they were wonderful people. Now, my question is this: what objective standard is here for a later court to protect the family with a photograph like my famous cowboy picture?
It's a child pornography case in a family on appeal. Most conservative judge in Kentucky, he writes the opinion reversing the case because he's afraid of something that could happen to him in his own experience. So then we're going to the two big picture approaches now. So this will bring more through one of these to be remembered as opposed to the other one. So extroverted intuition, outer world, and here and now is seeing things that are emerging, brainstorming all the possibilities, connecting different concepts together, seeing what might be, this might all fit together in this cool way. This is me, this is what I'm doing right now. I took a class on Myers-Briggs, I studied Jung, I studied storytelling and theater, I teach at institutes and teach trial stuff. I see all this stuff and they all connect, and that could be cool, and I can bring them together, and I can teach them to other people. That kind of approach to the brainstorming and seeing how connections happen. And the information comes into me that way. I miss the details, but I see all the connections between stuff. Here's an example of that from the movie. Look at all the way these things connect.
Supposing they're wrong.
You mean supposing they're wrong? What's the point of having witnesses at all?
Could they be wrong?
What are you trying to say? Those people stand on the stand under oath.
They're only people. People make mistakes. Could they be wrong?
Well, no, I don't think so.
You know so.
Oh, come on, nobody can know a thing like that. This isn't an exact science.
That's right, it isn't.
We're looking at all the possibilities that comes in, just that information comes in as possibilities. The introverted version of that is still big picture and kind of visioning focused, but it's much more focused than the extroverted version of mine. It's more focused on the future. You can see central themes and stuff. If you read the Yvonne Kitchens case and immediately went to this is a case about law, or the Dodd case, this is a case about the tribe. And your mind just gets there quickly. My mind goes, this could be this or that, and these would all be cool. Let's see, and this one connects to that. This is much more focused on getting that vision, is honing into it, understand complex patterns, and putting together. Ernie, who's going to speak next, is my boss. He's very strong in this. He took over the public defender system in Kentucky. He had a vision of what it should be in 12 years. And everything else came around. You could see what that was going to be. Where I see it could be this or this and this, and you could do all of this. This is the main thing.
Maybe what we need is a little yelling in here. These guys keep going off every which way. Didn't hear the scream, didn't hear the scream. What difference does it make? You people are talking only about the little details. You're forgetting the important stuff. I mean, all of a sudden, already...
Well, that one comes out as negative because that's the bias of the way the story is structured, where Henry Fonda's life is complex and lots of things, as opposed to not just one thing. But it doesn't have to be negative. That's just the way it is in the story. But we need to be aware that there are people on the jury who get information. So that's the slippery slope argument. And you can see the end of if we do this, if we scale back this part of the equation on the slippery slope is failing completely. The end solution will fail. Sorry about that beeping. Okay, so now that's how you get information in. Now we're talking about what you do with that information. Am I going too fast or too slow? I'm cooking through, so I want to get this. Maybe some early stories. So extroverted thinking, this is the logical, organized approach to making a decision. It's not based on how people feel or your personal values. It organizes things, puts them in order. What element is there? This element wasn't proven, so we're done. We don't care whether it's right or wrong. We're done. Follow the instructions. Socratic methods. This is what law school is set up to teach in. How we are supposed to make decisions as lawyers. Here's that.
The knife and the way it was bought is pretty strong evidence, don't you think?
I do.
Good. Now suppose we take these facts one at a time. One, the boy admitted going out of the house at 8 o'clock on the night of the murder after being slapped several times by his father.
No, he didn't say slapped. He said punched. There's a difference between a slap and a punch.
After being hit several times by his father. Two, he went directly to a neighborhood junk shop where he bought one of those switchblade knives. This wasn't what you'd call an ordinary knife. It had a very unusual carved handle and blade. The storekeeper who sold it to him said it was the only one of its kind he'd ever had in stock. Three, he met some friends of his in front of a tavern about 8:45. Am I right so far?
Yes, you are. You're very ill.
He talked with his friends for about an hour, leaving them at 9:45. During this time, they saw the switch knife. 4, they identified the death weapon in court as that very same knife. 5, he arrived home at about 10 o'clock. Now, this is where the stories offered by the state and the boy begin to diverge slightly. He claims that he went to a movie at about 11:30, returning home at 3:10 to find his father dead and himself arrested.
He also claims the two detectives arrested him and threw him down a half flight of stairs.
Now, what happened to the switch knife? He claims that it fell to a hole in his pocket on the way to the movie sometime between 11:30 and 3:10, and then he never saw it again. Now, there is the tale, gentlemen. I think it's quite clear that the boy never went to the movies that night. No one in the house saw him go out at 11:30. No one at the theater identified him. He couldn't even remember the names of the pictures he saw.
clear. Some people say, that was clear as mud, I didn't get any of that, and other people say, yeah, that's right. Okay. The introverted version of this,
What's the theme for the last one?
I don't know. Look at all the elements.
Oh.
Introverted is past, future, universal. It's not so much here and now, our world. Seeing the total process, checking for deviations in logic and why. Spotting the underlying cause. It's very much on cause and effect. Seeking solutions, searching for the tipping point, which you've heard people talk about here, I'm sure, throughout the week, but still persuaded from logical, linear definitions. Sounds similar to the other one. Watch this and see if I know you see the difference. This is what's really happening.
Just a minute. Let's take two pieces of testimony and try to put them together. First, the old man in the apartment downstairs. He says he heard the boy say, I'm going to kill you, and a split second later heard a body hit the floor. 1 second later, right?
That's right.
Second. The woman across the street swore positively she looked out of the window and saw the killing through the last two cars of a passing elevator train, right? The last two cars.
Well, what are you giving us here?
Just a minute. We've agreed that it takes 10 seconds for a train to pass a given point. Since the woman saw the killing through the last two cars, we can assume that the body hit the floor just as the train went by. Therefore, the train had been roaring by the old man's window a full 10 seconds before the body hit the floor. The old man, according to his own testimony, I'm going to kill you, body hitting the floor a split second later, would have had to hear the boy make this statement with the air roaring past his nose. It's not possible.
See the difference between those two? The first one was sort of a list, and all the parts of the list had to be there for it to make sense. This one is much more cause and effect. And in fact, I think I was there for your group doing brainstorming where I was doing why questions. That's why this is my strongest one. Why I focus in on to when it gets you out of 10, why somebody gets something, what's the cause and what's the effect. There's my whole things. Those two, Rebecca, you said you were a thinker. Which one do you think you were strong in?
I think I don't know, this is one where I'm having a hard time.
See the difference?
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, because I am like a missing element sort of person. You know, it's like, I'm a mad, but then I also am like liking to answer this question for myself. To make it all together. So I don't know if you can.
Which of the theory is that you were stronger in one way of perceiving and one way of judging, and that one of those is going to be introverted and one is going to be extroverted. So which of the intuition things did you say you were? Do you like me brainstorm everything, or do you see a clear vision? Or is that just not clear? Yeah, was there one of those that jumps out to you? So it's more likely in your situation, so in reality, that if that's extrovert, this one's more likely than two extroverts. Part of the idea is that we have to be successful people, to be here, or a successful person by definitions, you have to have the skill to operate in an extroverted way out in the world. That's the effect. And these two things work together so that you can operate in the area of nature. Not always the case. People argue with that, and that's the shortcut to trying to do it. Okay, two more. So extroverted feeling. This is valuing harmony in relationships and decision making. More understanding that people seek rewards, and seeking this reward yourself, you focus on other people's needs and values. Here's that example. Congratulations, you must be so happy. Mr. Lyle. I don't like the orthodox people.
Was he ashamed? I think I know this man better than anyone here. This is a quiet, silent, insignificant old man who has been nothing all his life, who has never had recognition for his name in the newspapers. Nobody knows him. Nobody quotes him. Nobody seeks his advice after 75 years. Gentlemen, that's a very sad thing to mean nothing. A man like this needs to be quoted, to be listened to be quoted just once. Very important to him. It'd be so hard for him to recede into the background.
Now, wait a minute.
When there
What
was
are you
a
trying
chance.
to do? Tell us he'd lie just so he could be important once?
No, he wouldn't really lie, but perhaps he made himself believe he heard those words and recognized the boy's face.
See, that's not a logical pull.
If you don't have that, okay, this is not good. I mean, I can get there if
Oh, yeah.
someone brings me there. So, I mean, you're saying that we can all get to all of these, okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
My big point is you got to be aware that you're going to have people on the jury who make decisions that way.
Right.
And you're going to have some things that you're more comfortable with than others.
Right.
Not the others.
But we can access all of these.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know I'm feeling, I'm not that.
Okay, I'll show you the other one.
Yeah.
And the other part of it is, depends on the case. Sometimes this is the one that wins you the case, and you're screwed on extroverted thinking. But you got to deal with that extroverted thinker on your case. You may try to get him out there and voir dire as much as you can.
So with Paula Cream, then a juror like that would be like, well, you know, she's had a hard life. She's coming forward and she couldn't catch the breakers before, so now this is her chance to get some type of publicity.
And it could be sympathetic towards her. You could understand how she got trapped in this situation of crime, rape, that she said rape out of regret, and now she's stuck in the justice system, and she can't go to the prosecutor now and say no.
Is that probably
Is that the same person though that feels sorry for maybe, you know, they're slow and actually retarded? So,
It could be, yeah. This is much more sentencing and mitigation of death penalty cases, an area where we focus on more rather than cold logic. But still, you think about the argument against the death penalty. This is about the argument of being compassionate. I don't want to live in a world where the government kills people, where the more thinking arguments would be, look how expensive it is. Does it really deter? Let's get emotion out of this thing and focus on facts and figures. You can make the same argument to try to fit a lot of different people's. I think that should be better. Okay, last one of these, I'll turn off that beeping thing. So this one is the introverted version. Inner world past focus. Seeking consistency between your personal values. There's a check in how I make this decision, how I believe the world should work. Decide what's important. Values, loyalty, commitment, patriotism, big picture, the values that people have. Persuade versus right or wrong. Things are black or they're white. I can't explain to you exactly all the details of how I made this decision, but this is the decision I'm going to make. This is just right.
This fighting, that's not why we are here. To fight, we have a responsibility. This I have always thought is a remarkable thing about democracy, that we are, what is the word, notified, that we are notified by mail to come down to this place to decide on the guilt or innocence of a man we have never heard of before. We have nothing to gain or lose by our verdict. This is one of the reasons why we are strong. We should not make it a personal thing.
So, this is what a lot of defense lawyers will say would be the waving the flag argument. The concept that it's better for 10 guilty people to go to prison, or to go free, and 1 innocent to go to prison, is a value-based sort of decision. We have lots of jurors who are in this area, especially in Kentucky, where we have a lot of fundamentalist belief systems that are there to be aware of this and get them in the way it works for us. Is this more you than the other few?
I'm definitely with that. Better 10 guilty go free than 1 innocent go to prison. Every once in a while, I'm not that touchy-feely, and I can be very, analytical too.
Sure.
But usually, I have to go with what brings me peace of mind. And I think, although I don't ignore facts.
No, yeah, I'm not saying that you don't. There are kind of home bases where you're more comfortable.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have gotten to the point where you're in this room today if you couldn't resolve them. But there are some areas where you.
Usually my decisions are based on what brings me peace of mind. There's a certain compromise.
Is this like being able to say this is what is right? I mean, this is, and I don't feel like I can always do that.
Yeah.
I.
This is, with the Myers-Briggs approach, we end up sort of ranking all of these in where you're most comfortable with. This is my very weakest thing.
Yeah. And I think just from knowing you, as much as I know you, you can say, this is right, or that's wrong, or this is how it should be. Yeah.
And I think also for most people, when you put, this is what is right, right is what is right to me. It may not be the universal truth, but this is my truth.
Yeah. And sometimes somebody could make an argument that you say, logically that makes sense, but I ain't going it.
Right.
Okay.
With that last one, are they judgmental because their truth may be different than somebody else's truth?
Depends on their value system, I guess. Part of your value system is not to be judgmental. We get jurors who can't serve on juries because you can't say judgment of somebody else is their value system. So, but also, yes, I think, if part of your value system is that those people are wrong, I'm not going to go to heaven because I don't believe in Jesus.
Right.
That is a judgmental sort of thing. Okay, so this is one way of problem solving that's sort of based on the way these things are explained. That's the order that I explain these things in. That information comes into your brain somehow. You compare that to what's going on in the past. You start brainstorming different possibilities there that could happen. Out of that brainstorming, some themes start to emerge. You organize those themes and ideas. You write very quickly, jot those down. Analyze strategies. Look at the impact. Check that against your personal values. Does that make a decision ultimately, and that may take you a different direction. Marty, I need to put that on the hand up there. Sorry.
So
Yeah. Shoot me an email and I'll send you this PowerPoint.
Okay.
And some books that do a good job. Get into this. This is both, and you can see how these each pair up with all these, the different structures. Which is why I think it's both makes a lot of sense, but it's also bullshit. Nobody thinks in that order individually, unless they're following a checklist that makes them do that. We'll talk about that later. So, as we've been talking about, we each have to do one of these things over here that's home base. We can do them all. And one of these over here that's home base. We can do them all. Or me, and I think Rebecca too. We are INTPs, is what Myers-Briggs would say. Only 5% of the population. My strongest, and Rebecca may be the reverse of this, she might be an ENTP. My strongest is introverted thinking. That's where when I'm making a decision, that's where I spend the most time. And what guides me the most. I use the others. And also, I can spend days and days brainstorming all the possibilities. I'm really happy doing that before I get to that decision. And I love working with the group and brainstorming and facilitating. So, how that plays out with this chart, something happens and I need to make a decision. I don't go step by step through these. You always start with, you've got to get information. So everybody starts with, information comes in. I go take this Myers-Briggs class and somebody's making me go take it. I think about it. Kind of analyze cause and effect, what did we do this, that, and the other thing. And I might jump back and compare it to some other system that I was using in the past. And I might jump back over here because that's where I'm most comfortable and I think about it some more. I'm still thinking in my head and I haven't talked to anybody else about it because I'm an introvert. I'm processing. And then I may jump over here and go, oh, wait a minute, cool. We could use it this way, that, and the other way. And that's when I start extroverting and I get excited. And I get a group of people together to say, this is the other, or I do it individually and come up with this PowerPoint. Spend a lot of time there. Then I go back over here at home base again and think about that, and that makes sense. Then I might get around to, okay, how are other people going to feel about this? If I do this, will they ever ask me back again? Then I might go back to comparing, the last time I pissed people off, it was about this and that, the other thing, so maybe I shouldn't do that. Then I might take all these possibilities and put it into, okay, here's a clear way I can do this. Here's my vision of how this could work. I could do it as a PowerPoint show, videos, blah, blah, blah. Then I organize it, okay, what's got to come first in the PowerPoint, this happens, that happens, the other thing. So I'm not doing that just go around. This is my way of processing, and I think probably rings true to Rebecca and what she was saying. Then finally I get around to, okay, does this fit into my world belief? If I'm teaching this stuff, am I doing evil? In my version of what is evil, is this right or wrong? This is not ethical to the Myers-Briggs group. They wouldn't like me doing it this way. But from my world belief, which is much more based on helping poor people who are facing crimes, should we use Jung's theories and Myers-Briggs theories to help persuade a jury to do something? Yes, I'm cool with that. And I can argue with people who think it's unethical to use this that way. That's my final check. Into my next brainstorm applications and how to do this. So, you would probably come at it completely. You would be focusing on here and bouncing over there and constantly going, you do all the other ones, but you're constantly checking back into, and you may just get off the bus if it doesn't fit into your value system, you're off to the next one. We're not going to do that. It's wrong, I ain't doing it, or it's right, we don't need to talk about it anymore. Move on. For me, since that's a weaker one, I do a whole lot of stuff before I get to it. I think that's making sense. So, they've done studies about lawyers, about what their strengths are here. And the reason this rings true to me is you think about people, and it's obviously not going to be one of you, because you're almost the direct opposites. The LSAT, going through the experience of the LSAT, sitting for 3 years through law school, taking the bar exam, is very focused on certain ways of thinking. So there's a self-selection type aspect of that that goes on before you can get a bar, pass the bar. And that narrows down a lot of people who can't get through that. The ones who are able to do, those aren't their strengths, who are able to get through it, are being brainwashed along the way to try to think that way. They're struggling with that and have this conflict a lot. So what they say, well, most lawyers are what I am, or very close to that, is switching the introvert and extrovert. Law school teaches us to be logical and see the big picture.
So,
But the DPA, that's the public defender organization I work for. When we used to give Myers-Briggs to people, I'd ask them if they, it was optional, but they wanted to put a sheet anonymous of what they were, so I tracked that for a while. And what I found was public defenders, at least the ones who were willing to share, weren't necessarily the same as the rest of the lawyers. And there were two different kinds of public defenders that emerged. The extroverted thinkers, introverted censors. And the other one of those, very different, is the extroverted intuitors, big pictures, brainstorming with introverted feeling. And that got me all excited when I saw that from what I was researching, because that fit in with what a lot of people believe about different types of public people. People get attracted to public defender work coming from different areas of, I'm defending the Constitution, I'm here to protect everybody, and sort of the warrior, I like to fight authority stuff, as opposed to the social worker public defender, which may come more from here. So that was real interesting to me, to see that, and they're both different than what most lawyers are. Yeah, these were just the numbers that jumped out. They were much higher in these two, but we definitely can do any of those. And none of us are either of these, but we know these people and we work with them in our office. And we're probably better at jumping back and forth between the two of them. You can see the conflicts that happen together. I'm a public defender because I believe in the Constitution versus I'm a social worker. I'm not a social worker. I'm not going to go talk to my client for 6 hours. Help him with who's going to keep his dog when it's not there. Versus the other people who may go too far with that, who go keep the dog themselves rather than making a phone call to get somebody to do it.
Yeah.
But the main reason I put those statistics up there is to reinforce we got to be aware of biases that are out there. If you don't know who's on your jury, what do? My argument with the presentation is you got to be aware of all of them and argue to all of them. You may be going for a hunter and just going after one of them, but you got to be aware they're all out there and know how they help you approach it.
So you really think that you can, through 4 years, you can figure out?
I don't. There are people who did, the woman who's on TV a lot through O.J. Simpson case, she does a profile for every juror. Lots of money and time. Investigators go to their house and learn how they cut their yard and decide what their sensors and how meticulous they are. And she comes up with a profile of the one she wants on the juror and uses that in the selection process. I'm not smart enough to know whether I'm following the right person. But that is, there are people who make a whole lot of money doing it. Since I can't get there, the best I can do is say, let's look at that story on tele. And I'm not giving up enough details. Well, I need to take this back to don't forget going over the elements for this case. But don't forget the other person who, is this just right or wrong, who doesn't care about the elements. I want to win them all over. Really, I'm going to never verdict. And I'm not positive which one's going to be best. I'm not sure I'm going to do that. I don't want to leave out a good hole because that's just not going to happen. So that's what that chart is sort of about, to help us go, okay, I need to make a diagram that fits that for here. I need a timeline to speak to those people. I need to talk about our criminal justice system as a whole, and what is right in this case. Just pull that apart, whatever. That's me there. There's some people on the jury. Okay. So that's the ask questions, or get up and leave, or we can talk about cases, or whether this makes any sense at all.
So just a general question on the other
Yeah.
people who cannot access one of these things or cannot, when they don't put together, those people are not functioning in society.
Tend to
That's
be
a
more of our
general idea.
clients.
Okay.
It's harder to function when you can't get this done.
Because there are, yes, some of our clients can't do more than one of these things.
Yeah.
So.
But it's hard to get a high school degree in that. This be on some level, some of these people, that's survive the clicks and those sorts of things. So most people can do it all. And some of the theory is, and I'm seeing it in my own life, a whole lot, is at certain points in your life, start seeing the need to really focus on developing these skills. Like in the 40s and 50s, you really start shifting to, we talked about doing yoga in one of the classes. I am very hard to do the extrovert and sensitive thing. And I see that would help me. I would be better at doing the other things I want to do. Because I have a hard time focusing and listening and being right here and now. So I do yoga and I meditate, and I'm not very good at it, but I love to do that. So that as you get older, you see the need to do things and you start to have it in those areas. So there are people that use this in therapy as well.
I'm not a here and now person. I may be paying attention to particular things, but in the back of my mind, I'm just as acutely aware of, all right, when this is over, I'm thinking,
Yeah.
this.
And, when you're teenage years and in your early 20s, you're experimenting with just living with those two things that are your strongest. And I don't need all that other stuff. And that causes, typical teenage problems. And as you get older, you start to realize your weaknesses and what you got to know.
In college, I was the here and now. I was like, I'm getting credit cards, but how does this going to affect me 15 years out here? Buying a house, whatever, I'm kicking it. But now I'm more, how is this going to affect me?
And that's okay.
For me, it happens sometimes when I'm hiking or out in the wilderness, or since I'm a manager, it happens to be on stage. And that's one of the things for being on stage is when I'm really, especially doing improvisation, it happens. You have to have and attracted to doing that because it gets me in a place that's really hard to really access.
That's part of why I think I need to put more on in terms of examining witnesses. Because if I'm introverted, I hear you with your answer, but I'm already knowing what the next couple of questions I'm going to ask you down the road. As opposed to listening to you now and taking the words that you use to describe the experience and looping it or tagging it or whatever it is. So I may miss something.
Everybody goes through that. It's just like the learning how to drive a car. There's different elements that you're going, but it's harder for some people to never get to really being involved in it. Like for me, it's learning how to drive a car may have made me more in the moment, but I had manually paying attention to things. But the idea, the big theme when we're talking about here, I think everybody here has problems with listening more here, listening across, and listening direct to what you're hearing. Kind of big deal. But once you adapt those skills, then it brings in sort of personality types and other people are able to then really do it.
Where do we learn these? Where do we learn these from? Is this based on our upbringing or parents or genetics?
There are lots of different theories out there. The ones that I buy is it's a combination. They think that it develops pretty much by the time you're 9 or 10. And that it's a combination of genetics and upbringing. But when you're 9 or 10, you're pretty solid in those. And then as life goes on, you start to develop it because this is become a successful person, whatever you define successful as. But I can see it, my son is 10, and I can see pretty clearly what I think his types are. My daughter is 5, and she's exploring. It hasn't settled in to what works for her.
That's why, this stuff is painful. Every moment you put on the spot, thinking about things, and that's why I fear it's not good.
And you can see how there are different institutes around the country and seeing how they've developed. I'm a training director, so I get to design an institute in Kentucky, several institutes that I was going to teach other people's and watch it. And you can see how there's the law school problem of teaching criminal defense lawyers to think big picture of things, logical, and that business compromised. So Clarence Darrow comes along, and some people get successful at getting more details and reaching out to emotional things. So NCDC comes along in the 80s and others that will swing it to, okay, we got to really teach people sense memory stuff. You got to teach them first person. You got to get to the emotion, tap into their own emotion. Your census thing is all about it. But this theory is you can't talk to anybody else unless you feel your own pain, which I see as this is a huge pendulum swing to the other side. And what I'm trying to do is some other people are going, wait a minute.
Right.
That's not enough, and you can see it here, you see it at all these institutes. I think your group doesn't have it, I don't have it in your group, but most of the groups in here have 1 or 2 people who are really struggling with this. Because they can't go to the emotional stuff, or they can't go to the detail stuff. And they're having a real hard time. They've been really successful, they did well at law school with that other thing, and they've seen it work with that other thing. But because we're teaching the pendulum way, theories, we'll teach you over here, and you come, and we'll teach you the extreme. Let's do first person crying on the floor and opening argument, which 99% of us will never do in a trial. But we're teaching way over here, get you over a little bit. And that does work for most of the people, but some people say, that's too, I'm not taking a step. I'm not even going to try it, because that's too far out there. And I do this for training directors, trying to say, we don't have to be pension to teach them all. And then people are aware of where they are on different things. And to understand that my home base is I'm that logic 1, 2, 3 guy, but I got to be able to communicate to the person who is and it's just another tool that I'm going to use. And then you can use whatever your home base is to justify the line. If I'm a logic guy, I can teach logically. I got to be able to communicate with people who are not. I want to use my logic to teach, figure out how to get the emotions and values. So, we have to cover some things. So my theory, this is, still developing. Obviously I'm still developing this because I'm using it to see this. But my theory is that when you create a closing, when you're thinking about your case, use it later in the case, not right from the start, that you can help check yourself and say, let's look at these 8 things and make sure somewhere in here I'm appealing to this type of way of thinking. Because you'll get some lawyers who every single argument they'll make that a patriotic and big picture of America's great, and here's the true. That's their home base. And people like me who would never go there on my own unless I thought, wait a minute, I just have to apply to this case and then do and then it's a strategic choice. But I want to at least force myself to think where I'm not comfortable with. And also to think for the vision. This is, I don't know if it fits into there, but I'm
practice, they're more excited because they want to see something, but they would never admit it.
Yeah.
You know, I think it was one case I was demonstrating what my client was doing when this guy came up, you know, and attacked him. And he was playing basketball, so I'm in the court, you know, getting ready to post up, and the judge, we ended up winning, and the judge was like, you know, Ms. Robinson, if you do that again, I'll have to foul you. And he goes, you know, that type of thing. So it's crazy. If anything else, it's the interchange that wakes them up. You know,
It gives them an image that'll stick in their head, where for some of them, words won't stick in their head.
Although, like, when I was doing my cross history, I'm there, I'm up on the wall,
Mhm.
and then it's so unnatural for me to, you know, go sit in a chair, and have the arm on the wall, I'm like, okay, I'm trying this because it's not, you know. And then they're like, you left your arm up the whole time. Because I'm talking about it, what you're doing, you know? I'm like, yeah, I knew something was off, you know, it didn't feel natural. You gotta be aware of what you're doing.
And that ties back to you.
Yeah,
If you were an extrovert and sensory, you really introverted.
yeah. And I'm like, I know my arm hurts, and I'm like, just take it down.
Put arm down.
Well, I have fun explaining to you. If you
Thank you.
find anything that works, send me an email. If it really does relate.
And we'll give you my email, because I like to.
Yeah.
I'll send you
Is
the
yours
PowerPoint.
on our, do we have your email on
I
our?
think they get the back of the emails.
We didn't get it back from you.
You didn't, thank you. I'll email you also a couple of books. Sure.
Yeah, my email. My email is on, no, it is.
Once you put it on there, I'll put that word. I just told myself in the library, but
I don't even know what it is.
I don't know.
your book is good.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, Ernie's doing his
Oh, yes, sir.
presentation.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
That was
Thanks for
wonderful.
listening to. Thanks.
I should have taken some psychology class.
We need to turn off the